Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer.
And I am producer Bill.
And today we are going to talk about the greatest robots in pop culture.
Robots. We're going to talk about robots, and I am not one at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're not just menacing you via CAPTCHA. They are definitely a staple in sci-fi fiction. Sci-fi fiction. What an idiot this guy is. Anyway, they really are a staple, and the Asimov's rules for robotics handed down through almost most stories kind of have some version of that. So in you guys' experience, what was I'll go with Bill first. What in your experience, what was the first robot? You knew their name, you knew that they were a fucking robot, they were a character in a show or a menace in a show or whatever.
You know what? I think it was the girl from Small Wonder. Oh man. And if you know what I'm talking about, you are definitely of a certain age, because there was what I think was sort of a short-lived sitcom about an inventor who builds a robot daughter who's just part of the family. And then it just turns into a very generic, like fish out of water sitcom, kind of the same mold of like I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But instead of having a supernatural presence in the family, they had a robot. And otherwise, it was a very feel-good 80s sitcom.
Yeah, Vicky the robot.
Vicky, that was her name. Yeah.
Vicky Lawson. Yeah. Well, and that's funny that you said first one that you saw, and I 100% know that it's Rosie from the Jetsons. I mean, if you're saying first one that I ever saw, it's Rosie from the Jetsons, 100%.
Wow.
By the way, Rosie from the Jetsons is high on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
kick-ass robot.
Of robots you'd have sex with, right, guys?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't want to be too 90s, but that's a badonkadonk.
You know, she just
thick.
Dude, she just hover over your junk, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just hook it up, you know. So basically, AC or DC, baby.
I'm a both personally.
It swings both ways.
I love that it took us literally 2 minutes and whatever amount of seconds to get into the robot sex. So pretty proud of it, guys. Pretty proud of it.
Why even have robots? You know, why even have them?
I do love that when people started inventing robots, the first thing they decided to do was like, how can we fuck this robot?
Well, by the way, okay, so now I want to get into this. I don't know that it was the first robot ever in pop culture, but one of the early sort of ubiquitous examples of a robot was, I think it was Maria in Metropolis, the Fritz Lang silent movie Metropolis. That robot, which is still an absolutely iconic robot design, was essentially designed to be a sexy lady. And this was in like the 1920s.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, like one of the first things, and let's just get past it so we don't have to acknowledge it anymore. Okay. One of the first things to do, the dudes who invent robots, one of the first things they think about is, hey, let me invent a victimless crime. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that shit. So it's like, I think, I mean, look, there's certain people who marry like stuff like that, you know? Yeah, hey, sure. Like C-3PO was mine, by the way, not my sex robot, but my first robot that I remember.
C-3PO's voice was the fucking
that's how C-3PO sounds. You know, C-3PO was the first C-3PO, and I guess R2-D2 as a tag team were the first times I saw robots as like a character. I may have seen, you know, Rosie or something like that earlier, but the ones that really imprinted on me were those two. And it was really like, for some reason, I kind of thought of them as like one piece that fit together, because maybe I was getting introduced to like Transformers and shit at the same time that I kind of, because like I had to go back and do the Star Wars thing. So like maybe I thought that they were going to combine and form something. I was always waiting for that because they were always together, and I was like, when are they going to form something? And then they never formed anything.
They formed a great comedic duo.
You're right.
You know what? Well said, Ron. I was going to ask C-3PO or R2D2, who's your favorite?
Everybody's going to say R2D2.
Yes, as they should. All right.
Yeah. So, look, should we hit on cool robots in Star Wars just to knock it out?
Are any better than R2D2?
I mean, well, I guess that's true. No, BB-8's probably not cooler. Pretty rad, but not cool. Not cooler. So
for me, the only one that kind of there's probably two that kind of hold up. One is that robot from Rogue One that also has like a surly personality.
Yeah.
Love that.
I mean, anything done by Alan Tudyk was going to be good.
What was his name? Like K11 or some shit? That was a cool
K2SO?
K2SO.
Yeah.
That motherfucker was cool. Yeah, that was a cool robot.
All right.
And then the robot emancipation female robot from Solo that was palling around with Lando. That was a dope robot too.
Yeah. And then they of course had to defeat her, neuter her, and rip her head off and put it on the dashboard of the ship.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Well, look, I guess since we're talking about robots, let's just get into it a little bit. Let's just say that Star Wars depictions of robots as it's gone through various phases has made it more, the longer you see robots and droids inside of Star Wars, the more you go, I think you guys have just made slaves that for real, because a lot of these robots are clearly thinking bots with personalities. Like they make their own decisions. They do odd things. They're not doing it because of their programming. A lot of times they're doing it like out of a thoughtful thing. Sure, maybe they have someone who they're with, but like a lot of the decisions they're making are like sort of freedom-like choices. And and then in many of the instances, they're just also made to just like do a bunch of work. It's very confusing.
Do you guys know the origin of the word robot, like the etymology of the word robot?
I don't.
It was originally a Slavic word, rabota, which meant forced labor.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So it comes from the Middle Ages, and it was essentially referring to a system whereby a serf would be put in a position where they had to do forced labor in order to have their rent paid by the lord of whatever land they lived on. So robot is just a cognate of this word that describes a system of indentured servitude.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like if a robot can't think, I don't give a shit if it's doing a bunch of work. But as soon as it starts like thinking for itself and trying to survive, like even if that's a program within it, it still kind of makes me go, I don't know if we should. I mean, I don't know what it does otherwise, but
yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but it's also there's a little bit of a blurry line between like robot and artificial intelligence.
True.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like you don't have to have both. And I always felt like, and maybe it's just the language thing, but I always felt like R2D2 was maybe not fully sentient, that he was more, you know, like obviously he could do things and he had something like a personality, but he felt a little bit more utilitarian. But maybe that's just a bias because he doesn't have language in the way that we understand it. But like your robot doesn't have to be self-aware. Like, you know, it's two separate things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like for fiction, you need to have a little bit of artificial intelligence in your robots, and maybe, you know, R2D2 sort of the threshold. So he sort of rocked back and forth. He squealed, you know what I'm saying? Little things to let you know he's a little bit alive. But at the same time, And me and Ron have had this conversation. Ron's like, Ron definitely knows in his heart that R2D2 is a person, period.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, did he do one fucking thing that wasn't in the programming? No. So he's a good, loyal friend or a fucking robot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, because he does, usually it's like, hey, R2, plug into that thing and figure out that thing. And then he does that. And then the rest is maybe survival instinct too, though, because, like, you know, he pulls out the shocker and sends an electric volt to this guy or that guy. He does a little squill when he's in danger or whatever.
Yeah.
But that arguably could be just programming, like, hey, we programmed survival into this robot because they're expensive.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And value. Yeah. They do things that we need them to do. I think that's true.
An astromech that's another thing, though. An astromech. It literally flies co-pilot with you and makes sure you don't fucking die.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's like a co-pilot and an on-site mechanic, and can fly in fucking space and do stuff, as you can see from R2D2 flying later, conveniently. So if something goes wrong with your ship, it can boost around, go to the underbelly, and work on it and shit in a way that you fucking can't. You know, it's invaluable. So, like, there's some like toasters, you know, that these Jawas got in the desert, selling them to the moisture farmers. Like, I don't know, man. Astromech seem like some shit that'd be in Top Gun's cockpit or something, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess Star Wars is a world where everybody kind of goes around like that, but I don't know. It sort of breaks down. You look at it too close. But the whole point of droids, I think, us going to the whole slave point, and we've talked about it with droids a lot, but robots in and of themselves are supposed to be the people, quote unquote, or the things that we send in so that humankind doesn't have to get run over by that car. They're supposed to be these things that we send in so that humans don't have to be in danger. So by definition, they are like this sort of disposable. And so the AI thing comes in all the time in, I am disposable, but I am not disposable. I am not expendable, John Rambo. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. I am not expendable. I am a person.
Which is always, not always, but usually a good story. However, I want to make the case for disposable robots, because nothing is better for superheroes fighting than some tough-ass disposable robots.
100%.
Whether it's Age of Ultron or whether it's the old Fleischer Superman cartoons, like, I love superheroes beating the shit out of robots. Or even in the case of Star Wars, now you can make the case that maybe they're vehicles, but like coming up with strategies to take down the AT-ATs or AT-ATs, whatever you prefer. Like, that's some kick-ass robot fighting. And like, I think having a wide variety of super kick-ass, malleable, semi-autonomous or even fully autonomous robots to smash and destroy without having a bunch of ethical complications is vital to some action fiction.
Absolutely. Did you guys, we're going to do a Patreon on this, by the way, patreon.com/thegreatestpod, about Guardians. And there is a scene in there that is made so much better because these are mostly robots now. And it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, without getting into spoilers, they did that in Guardians 2 as well, when, I forget the name of the gold people, but when the gold people attack, it's all of those remote piloted drones. And so they can just go to town on them with reckless abandon, and you don't get into any sticky ethical consequences. And I love that. I think it's great.
Well, yeah, I also think I think though there is this weird schism between robot and drone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like I think when I think of drone movies, like that movie like White House Down or whatever the fuck, where there's these killer drones that were coming after the president. The president's like Morgan Freeman, I think, and fucking Gerard Butler is saving Morgan Freeman president from a swarm of drones. It was the first, and it's from a movie like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it's not robots. You know what I mean? It's kind of like how birds, it'd be different if there was a bunch of robots in the streets tearing shit up. like those Matrix prequels from the Animatrix or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like the flying thing of them, they don't seem to have enough personality. Now I would say, oh, I'd pay to see a movie about one of them motherfuckers that wants to get you, like a sort of cubist raven with glowing eyes that recognizes you and has drone powers. It could swoop down on you with this mechanical fury, but it's like sort of bird shaped in a cubist way. That could be scary as fuck. But like a big swarm of anything, I'm just get swarmed up and die. What the fuck?
Is it
like
it's
not scary?
Is it the flying that's catching you up on drones?
I just don't. They don't move me like robots. I think there's always going to be for me a clear line of demarcation between, like, and I guess in Age of Ultron, you could say that those were drones. They were robot bodies that flew around and had some. But like, as long as you're like a plane with like a payload and you're flying around, I don't consider you a robot. You don't get to be a robot. I mean, I'm robotist in that.
I think that's more what I was asking, because I think you make a good point with the Ultron drones, but also even something like Ed 209 from RoboCop, you could argue like that's a drone. You know what I mean?
Right. And I just totally consider him a robot because he doesn't have, I think it's the drone's propensity to be guided by people. Whereas the robot has guiding programming itself. Yeah, it has programming that it's using as a guide for its own quote unquote autonomous actions given these protocols.
And it has a human-ish form to it, almost like it's on two legs.
Part of it. That's part of it. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the robot thing that you got to get behind. So okay,
because they're there to replace people, I just got to make this point.
Yeah.
Most of the time, especially in pop culture, maybe not in real life, but most of the time in pop culture, they're there to replace people, not to replace work. If you understand what I'm saying. Like they're not there to just generate this work or whatever. They're there to replace people in some way in most stories. Or they represent a certain class of people. They're not like Loaderbot has less personality than a droid.
Right.
You know.
No, I get that completely. And yeah, you're right. Because if you think about it, you know, you could make the case that like the Ripley, I guess maybe that was what you're referring to, like the exoskeleton that she wears in Aliens is theoretically a robot, but it doesn't feel like of a piece with what we're talking about.
Yeah, because it has no...
Voltron can't count as a robot because it's led by people who are wearing it. Yeah. That almost counts as a vehicle. Did you guys bring that up in the...
We didn't bring that up, but you know what? I'm glad that it's in the robot conversation, because I would almost argue though that they kind of are robots, but they're not. They are, but they're not. Like the Pacific
Transformers are robots. Transformers are robots.
Yeah, but I think but this gets to the heart of the whole distinction, right? The only reason you're saying the Transformers are robots is because they have artificial intelligence.
You're right.
But if you look at those Pacific Rim things, those are fucking robots.
Those are fucking robots.
Those are 100%. Like, those are not vehicles. They're just robots operated by people. I don't think that just because you're not artificially intelligent takes you out of the running of being a robot. You know,
that's most robots in real life, and frankly, if you look at the overarching amount of them in fiction, are robots. They're not people. You know what I'm saying? Like, because even in the ones where there's a nanny bot that's going crazy because it wants the husband or some shit like that, because it's growing a personality or something, it still loads its dishes into some fucking robot thing that has no conscience.
See,
you know what I'm saying?
The problem with that, though, is you guys, when we start making rules where we allow a robot that is piloted by a human to be a robot, that means we include real steel, which I just had to look up the name of.
I mean, it's not on the list of the greatest robots, but I would say for sure it is a robot.
It is a robot. It's not iRobot. It's a robot.
It is neither iRobot or the robot, but a robot.
It is a robot. Oh man. But yeah, Pacific Rim things are robots, but also, yeah, dude, giving something that big its own autonomy is weird, which is why back in the days I used to read Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, and it was drawn by Jeff Darrow with his hyper meticulous style, and he was like fighting like this mutagenic virus that made people into basically dragons, or they would turn into dragons that would form into a big mega dragon when they mutated all together to this big thing. And so Big Guy was America's super robot, like Superman, what's his name, Iron Giant. It was like America's Iron Giant, but like more tricked out with more shit. You launch it from aircraft carrier and shit, big ceremony. President Eisenhower shakes his big metal hand, shit, you know?
Yeah.
And they shoot off this giant robot. And then like Japan had this little boy robot based upon Astro Boy. And it was just like the little Astro Boy robot just wanted to hang out with the big guy and kick it with him. You know, Big Guy was like a robot version of Captain America. And this little Japanese robot wanted to hang out with him and shit. It was really interesting for like 2 fucking issues, and then they never did. they did maybe 2 more comics ever, but those were really good big robots, and I felt that they were robots. Also, Hard Boiled, the comic book.
That is a robot in it?
The Hard Boiled, the comic book, has it's a robot guy named Nixon, and he's a tax collector, but he's really a corporate assassin that's a robot. You need to read that book. It's fucking amazing.
I've never read that. Interesting.
Dude, he's one of the greatest robots of all time, because he has the classic, I'm fighting against my programming. If I fight against my programming, what am I?
Yeah.
Do I like deserve to exist anymore now that I've countermanded my programming? Well, why are you questioning why you deserve it just because you're not a slave anymore? Maybe you should adopt this other thing. These other robots who have gotten sentience kind of get to him. It's like a pre-Matrix sort of story, kind of. Hard Boiled by Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow. Great stuff.
Very interesting.
You know what? I got to say, guys, I'm a little disappointed you not thinking that this isn't perfect robots on the list. I don't.
What are we doing? Come on.
That was real steel, guys.
I know it was.
For those of you on the podcast, you can go to the YouTube page to check out the picture I just posted up, just because I thought it was too funny. I spent a minute half listening just so I could look that real steel robot up. That shit is terrible. But you brought up comic books, and here's a question I have for you. Do we count Iron Man? Do we count Steel? I know we would count Red Tornado, right? I know we would count Vision as robots. Sure. Obviously not the greatest robots, because we know how you feel about Vision. Obviously, we don't count Vision as one of the greatest robots. But I'm just kind of trying to lay a groundwork of what we're including here, because, you know, Terminator, I think that counts as a robot 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Terminator is on the very, very, very short list of greatest robots, because obviously how terrifying the robot is. Obviously, it is probably one of the most emblematic of the thing I was saying earlier. They are not there just to do work. You can make things that do not replace people that do work. Mm-hmm. They are here to replace you. They're wearing your fucking flesh. You know what I'm saying? These things, these eldritch, not eldritch, but sort of eldritch, you know, because they come from the future or weird other dimensions and shit, made of metal under organic stuff to fool you. Oh, that's so fucking creepy, man. That's one of the robot concepts that's just head and shoulders above most of the other ones.
Well, and that Stan Winston design of the Terminator robot too is just iconic, where he literally like made a skeleton from hell and then he turned it into a robot. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like Wolverine skeleton. That was a quick look at Wolverine skeleton, actually.
Yeah. Not a bad point. Ron, you said the Borg. Does that count as a robot though?
That's my question. The Borg's pretty dope. It's part in organic, part machine.
See, this is the thing. I sort of feel like robot is a little bit like the Supreme Court definition of porn, where it's like, I don't quite know how to articulate it, but I know it when I see it. And like Iron Man and Steel clearly are not robots, because those are suits, right? And they're like suits that don't even have any visible moving parts, like outside of just what goes on the human being. Which obviously I know, like the Iron Man suits in particular have been shown that they could be autonomous and they could be drone, essentially remote operated as drones. I think that that's kind of BS because they don't have any internal structure. But then again, the whole Iron Man armor is kind of BS anyway. But like all that to say, we could talk circles around it, but I think we all know that Iron Man is not a robot.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean,
but those Pacific Rim things are definitely robots.
Well, they're robots.
It's such an interesting.
They work without being human powered, I guess is the point being.
That's true.
Like, the humans operate them, but you don't need a human to power, like
to move it.
It doesn't have, the actual like mechanics of how it moves is all mechanical.
Yeah. And they just decided that a person doing it would make more sense because a person will react to whatever a monster is doing better than a robot would probably react if it wasn't, programmed correctly. I think that makes sense.
Well, and plus, like, I mean, look at even robots that we have now. Like when we look at like battle bots, if something is of a certain size, there's only so much intelligence you could put into it. There is a little bit of driving or whatever you need to do. The Pacific Rim robots, I think, aren't mech suits because anything that gets outside of roughly human size becomes a robot. Mm-hmm. I think
that's true.
The level of it is right about Ripley's thing. Ripley's loader bot is right about where it goes almost into not being an exosuit. It goes into actual robot territory. And it's that big.
And I think to my point too, like the fact that it has parts and pieces that are independently structured, right? So like those pincers and the legs and everything, like, yes, she needs to move inside of it in order to move it. But again, it's more like she's piloting something, not like it's reacting to her. If you can just understand a little bit of a distinction there.
Right. And it's just, I think what we're getting at is for our podcast, I don't think it has to be autonomous necessarily to be a robot. I think that's what we're coming to, is that we don't think that you have to be all the way autonomous. But of the autonomous robots, got to mention Robbie the robot. He always knew where the danger was at. You know what I'm saying? He was always calling out to his homeboy, telling him what's up.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That robot sucks ass. And I hate that we were ever at that stage of robot development because it just seems embarrassing at this point. I know I sound like a fucking Zoomer or something, but like that shit was weird looking.
To be clear, the Lost in Space reboot that they did on Netflix actually had a kind of dope version of Will Robinson's robot.
They did. They actually did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it count as the greatest robots, though? I don't think so.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Ed, you mentioned Iron Giant in passing, and Iron Giant's got to be somewhere on the list. I mean, that is like the design, the way it moves, the story obviously is an all-timer. Like Iron Giant is fantastic.
Yep, agreed.
Well, watching somebody decide not to be what they're programmed to be, we love that when it's soldiers. We love that when it's cowboys. We love it when it's robots. It's a really, if there's one part that's been loaded into the American screenplay and the American novel, it's the change thing. Like, it's like, I think, they have to change some kind of way. They have to adopt some sort of new moral, and you might as well go from mindless killing machine to, killing machine with a purpose because they killed your dog or something.
Big brother. He's a big brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, in regards to robots, though, we looked at some of the Star Wars droids and stuff. I think we get into the realm of androids. Androids are obviously robots. Are they a different type of robot to where we can't really talk about them as being robots? Because they are, again, they're trying to replace human beings. Terminator robot is technically an android.
Yeah, data. What do we want to call them? I don't know.
Who are you, Pulaski? It's Data.
Data, I think, is definitely a robot. I think where androids get tricky is like Blade Runner replicants, where it's like they're not human, but they are, or even like the quote unquote robots from Alien, where it's like they seem to be built out of organic material, even though they're not human. So it's like they're more bioengineered than like built. That's where it gets a little bit hazy for me.
Yeah. Like I think Yeah, call
Because
it
Data.
sniper.
Well, I was just gonna say because Data has like circuit boards and shit. Like you can open him up and he's got wiring in him and all that. You know, whereas like you open up Ash from Aliens and like he's got a bunch of pumps and tubes with white creamy goo in it, and it's like maybe it's a similar thing in concept, but in execution it just feels different.
Okay. I can't wait for people to clip out pipes and tubes with white creamy goo.
Pipes and tubes with white goo. Remember my beats?
Oh my God. So, anybody order a large pizza?
I ordered a bunch of tubes and white goo.
Filled with white goo, yeah.
Well, dude, but I think what's interesting about the ones in Alien and Aliens is it is a machine, but again, there's protocols. So actually it becomes kind of a reflection of Ripley in the first movie. Ripley in the first movie was like, yo, I love you guys as much as I can love assholes that I work with who don't really treat me well. And I just got to say, I'm not going to let that guy back in on the ship because he got a fucked up thing on his face of alien origin. And that would like break all kind of rules. So like, if you want to call me an automaton and be an asshole about it, that's fine, but I'm not letting him back in. Of course, they overrule her. The whole fucking plot of the movie happens because robotic protocol wasn't stuck to. You know what I'm saying? They decided to be humanist and other shit and got everybody all fucked up. You know what I mean? So it's like there is this kind of corollary between like she was a robot and then a real fucking robot comes around and goes, oh yeah, bitch, I'm a robot, but I ain't cautious like you. I want to grab an alien and take its eggs back home with me because my programming says that'd be a real great idea for the company. And I really believe that as this bioorganism, I'm going to fight you with superhuman strength and go try to grab an alien to take it back home. And I'll fuck you over if I have to do it. And it was cool. In Aliens, Burke did that. He became the automaton robot for the corporation without actually being a robot. He was just a guy who was willing to do what a robot would do. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this through line of android, automaton, slave, robot, working man. There's this kind of shell game going on in Alien and Aliens that's just never been matched in any of the rest of the movies. That's a big part of it. The economy is a big part of Aliens. You know what I'm saying? They're on a rig. They always have to have one robot because they're carrying too much dope equipment. They always have to have one robot watch these dumb humies. You know what I'm saying? The company assigns a robot, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay. So on these robots, it's been a while since I've watched Alien or Aliens. So remind me, do any of the facehuggers try to latch on to the robots?
No. And
my
you get
question
the impression
is,
it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I was going to that's my question. Is this white goo partly biological and then partly is it
lubricant?
Okay, it's not. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's lubricant.
Because I mean, it's been well established multiple times that alien robots can survive with their heads ripped off.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then you just talk to the head, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess that would count as a robot. It's just they fumbled that bag really badly, especially everything you were talking about, Ed, with the Michael Fassbender character in the Alien prequels, where suddenly it got so far away from like the corporatist thinking and sort of like the labor implications of robots, and then it came to this like weird spiritual place of creator and created, and it's like they never actually. It's like they implied all that stuff without ever actually saying anything about it. Oof.
I just want to point out that I do think it would be an interesting, and this is a tangent. I do think it'd be interesting if you decided through some kind of story machinations that these robots could be turned into aliens, and like the facehugger went in, incorporated technological, biotechnological stuff into it, and then you got a half robot, half alien situation going on.
All right. Well, it is.
I just think it'd be dope.
It is canon that like the Blade Runner universe is the same universe as the Alien universe.
Yeah, I was about to go there. Go ahead.
And the Blade Runner replicants have been established to be, you know, biological. They're bioorganic androids. So, Ron, you're onto something.
Dude, this is our next comic book that we can't write because people own the rights to it. But dude, that would be so dope.
Yeah, well, the Blade Runner, a Blade Runner replicant on the run, but gets involved in an alien adventure, and one of her compadres is pregnant with an alien baby that comes out, and it's got replicant power, alien power. It's it looks all weird because it's like low-key humanoid, but it's like an alien. Yeah.
Oh, what if it's like it's like an albino alien? It has like weird white translucent skin. Like it comes out looking all fucked up in some way. That
dude, and it's like, oh, dude, and like look, it's armor, like it's white armor. It's almost like not stormtrooper armor, but you get what I'm saying. Like it's like those interconnecting click clacks of just white armor all over it. Oh,
yeah, it almost has like a sheen of like an Apple product. Like it's a little too slick and glossy, you know?
Yeah. And that's what makes it so deadly. And it's always slick and wet and white.
Oh yeah.
Somebody's gonna clip that out too.
It's always slick and white.
Oh man, if you pair this with some of the audio of us talking about sex robots at the beginning, you have got yourself an interesting supercut.
Oh my god, dude! All right, well, the first person to cancel us with a supercut gets a free subscription to our Patreon. But dude, I really think, as far as robots in pop culture that I liked, we talked about Data for a second. I gotta say, if you watched all of that shit and then you watched all of this last season, not those first shitty 2 seasons, I don't want to hear about it, but this last season of Picard, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, the arc that Data goes through, from wanting to be a human to getting his greatest wish, but in a Faustian type way in the movies, to coming back around to wanting to be so human that he wanted to die, to like now whatever form Data is in the new season. It's nothing you've ever seen before, and it's very fucking interesting. And it's like, damn, dude, like he is one of the greatest pop culture robots, period.
Oh,
he
100%.
He 100%. Like fucked a chick. He had a daughter. He fucking tried to create life and fucked it up. So he kind of understood his place in, like, you know, the hierarchy. He knew he couldn't do what Sung could do. Another area in which he's failed to be a human, as inventive as a human can be. He's always trying to paint because he's trying to invent. He's always trying to learn how to do and be like people. You know, he's like ChatGPT trying to get good at being a real boy, you know.
I mean, you're not far off there. Like, that's pretty much what he is.
So I just love that. I just love that arc of a person who finally, man, I wish you guys were Star Trek heads, because in Picard season 3, he kind of does get his wish, but in a way you never would have imagined. And it's just so fucking interesting, dude, how they're able to weave that in. Because, you know, this motherfucker look older than, you know what I'm saying?
I have watched every episode of Next Generation. I just haven't seen the news. I cannot buy any more streaming services, guys. I just can't do it.
Agreed.
I even have the money to do it. I can't do it. It's not, I can't
morally,
do it.
You can't do it.
Yeah, morally.
It's getting to a point where it's like, I feel like as soon as I go above the number that I would have paid for cable, I've wasted my time. Because the whole point is to not have cable. Right. And I pay for a couple of streaming services. And now, once you get to a certain point and you're now paying $100 a month, well, it's the same thing now.
Yeah.
They got me again.
Well, you know, a robot wouldn't have any trouble with that, because
that's true.
I also think that in robotics, though, we do have to talk about some of the is the robot only as cool as the person who made him up? Like the fact that we know Wayland Yutani and all these fuckers that made the Blade Runner robots, they're kind of fresh. If you don't know who made the robot, it takes a sheen of freshness off of it, to me.
I mean, that's interesting, because I do think a lot of the coolness of the robots that come to mind for me do have to do with like the purpose or the function they are serving, and whether that means you know exactly who created them or just generally the system that created them.
Yeah,
it does add a lot to it. And actually, I'm trying to think now, like, Can you think of a pop culture robot where you just don't know where it comes from? Like where you just, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know. Because I think that that's
Yeah.
sort of integral to the story of a robot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You got, even when you do stuff like AI, the Stanley Kubrick Steven Spielberg vehicle,
Yeah.
where, you know, this robot, what happens to him over time, and he was made to do X, Y, and Z. There's always, I think what's great about robot stories is there's always, it starts with the function,
Mm.
and then the robot maybe can grow past its function if it lives long enough and has enough experiences that ding it up and change its personality. You know, I know that people who read are whack, Bill, but I read a couple books recently, a couple sci-fi books by C. Robert Cargill, and one was called fuck, I'm blanking on it right now. God damn it. Oh, one was called Sea of Rust.
Okay.
And it was about basically a robot. It opens on a robot stalking another robot into the Badlands, and the robot's kind of actuator is messing up. He's kind of breaking down, and the robot walks up to it and convinces it, "Hey, man, let me help you. Just turn off for a second, and I'll fix your thing. I got the parts right here. It's all good. You sure you're gonna turn me back on, bro? Don't worry about it, dude." Turns himself off. He just loots the guy for parts.
Sure.
And fixes himself up and keeps trucking. And he's got an affiliation with this gang of robots, and this other robot really hates him, and they fight over the same shit. It's like, it was so fucking cool. Like, that book is amazing. I wanted to make some kind of movie out of that shit. It was beautiful, this world of robots, and they all had, they had different shapes because they had different functions. So like a big ass powerlifting looking older rot would be like the dude you go to like change your outer appearance, because he can lift any robot, and he's sort of an artist. He's got these new pinchers that he got modified so that he can lift you and change all your parts and shit. So he's like a plastic surgeon for robots or something. You know, just beautiful shit like that. I love that stuff.
Let me burst your bubble, because that all sounds like a ripoff to me of my favorite robot in pop culture, Bender from Futurama.
Ooh.
And the whole robot culture posited by Futurama pretty much sounds like exactly what you just described.
You know what? I think you're right, except like they just killed all the people. So I think that is what makes them be in such a weird state, because nobody's there to make more of them. They aren't necessarily like, just because you got made doesn't mean you know how to make more of you. You know what I'm saying? And you only have so many. Maybe you're a robot that only has so many slots for memory. And at the time when the EMPs went off and they tried to kill us all or whatever, that was the end of technology. So you got 4 memory slots. One of them's burnt out from overuse. Now you can only load up so many skills. You got to put kung fu in there, or languages, or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? There's all this shit you got to do as a robot in this time with no people. That's fucking amazing. I think that's where it diverges.
Dystopian robots, huh?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, robots have to be physical. We can't have something just exist as a program, right? Because that's not a robot, or is it?
Well, what are you referring to? We'll give it the sniff test.
I mean, look, this is just a personal thing. It's not an actual. It's not a pop culture robot per se, even though it was a bestseller novel. It's a book I called We Are Legion / We Are Bob, and it's the concept of what is it when it's self-replicating robots? There's a concept. There's a specific concept I'm referring to that I can't think of off the top of my head.
Gray goo?
Yeah, that's it. It's gray goo. But there's basically okay, I'll tell you the basic plot. There's a guy who's an engineer, and he there's a technology now where you can put your brain / consciousness into a computer. And so he decides to do that, thinking at some point down the road, it'll be interesting. Maybe he'll exist. Maybe he won't. No big deal, right? Then he gets hit by a car and dies like the day after. Wakes up, I can't remember the number of years, but let's say 500 years. Earth has basically been destroyed and is a mess. There's still people there, but it's like dystopian sort of thing. And so he starts existing and starts coming up with a way to self-replicate. That's the shortened version. There's obviously more to it because it's sort of like, apparently there's a lot of these AIs, and people's brains were put on the thing, and most of them go crazy at a certain point because you're still technically a human brain, but the concept of not having a body or a real existence drives most of the AI insane, and then they start going on a loop and stop working. And he's one of the few that doesn't do that. Then he goes into space and starts making more of himself because the idea is they wanted to spread human culture around the world. So he starts doing that. But as he's doing that, it turns out that each AI has a little bit of a different tweak to it. So each time he makes a copy of himself, it names itself, becomes a little bit different, maybe focuses on some certain thing for whatever reason. Maybe he gives it a job to do that, whatever it is. And so there's now millions of Bobs all named different stuff. Bunch of pop culture references and a lot of fun stuff. But the concept of it is really interesting to me. And they do sort of make bodies. He basically becomes a ship, but then he becomes an AI space as well. So all the Bobs can meet in this AI space and have conversations about what they're trying to do to expand this area. And at one point, he halfway becomes a god because he goes down to a planet where there's a lower life form starting to evolve. And he sort of helps them figure out he finds one guy who's real smart and starts giving hints to that guy about how to use tools and how to do this, and then saves them from a cataclysm. And then, you know what I mean? Like there's all these interesting concepts in it. And I just think it's a fantastic book with a great idea, but I don't know if it quite counts as robot. That was what
I mean, it sounds like there's a ton of concepts in there, some of which I think are robots and some of which are not.
Like, yeah.
Well, it's like trying to probably look at all the aspects of the actual, like, okay, from AI to regular robotics and everything in between. I just think in the end, most of the robots that we tend to identify with tend to be humanoid.
Yep.
Tend to be something like if it does have a personality, it's like kind of not supposed to. It's kind of like a surly robot is naturally cool. That's why Bender is cool. And Bender is in the pantheon of freshest robots. We're 100%. Not that's not even up for debate. Bender is the Rocket Raccoon of that fucking show. You know what I'm saying? Just like irascible great presence.
Now, here's a question for you. Is this because we're old? Because I think you'll agree with this as one of the coolest robots ever. But also, would anybody else agree with this? And that's RoboCop.
He's a cybernetic organism.
It's a human brain, right?
Oh,
I don't know why, but it's like suddenly I'm like, which to be honest with you is a little bit of my reaction when you were describing that book. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, but it's a human's brain, and there's
sending the electronic impulses. It's just
right.
It's the concept as if we actually got, because there's people who've come up with that idea, but they literally can't map the neurons in a brain. They haven't had a computer that can do it. It's not possible right now. Right. So the concept of it is way, way, way obviously futuristic and probably unrealistic, but still.
Right. And then, you know, in RoboCop's case, yes, he's a cyborg, but like it feels, I don't know, there's just something about it that feels like the fact that it is a meat brain in there.
Well, you know what?
I hesitate to think of it as a robot, but anyway.
Yeah. I think that he starts. I think the reason why RoboCop is fresh as fuck is it's a guy. He tries to go do his job. He gets murdered. He comes back and he's a robot. Set of protocols, no fucking autonomy, no nothing. Starts doing weird shit, showing weird bits of individuality, twirling his gun. You know what I'm saying? Like not spitting up his baby food and going out and going back to his house to look at the house where he used to live before he got murdered, and you know, getting all the flashbacks. That type of stuff is him becoming a man, and that's why towards the end, spoiler alert for a billion-year-old movie, my name is Murphy. My name is no longer fucking RoboCop. I am not a fucking bot. I do what I want. My human brain has now busted through all the protocols, all the corporate directives, and I control this body. I am now autonomous. You know what I mean? That's the dope thing about RoboCop. It's like it starts out a guy to robot to guy again.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, so maybe it doesn't count as a robot.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
dope, but yeah, maybe it doesn't count as a robot. Okay, cool.
It's really funny when you think about it too, though, because the fact that the Terminator is mechanical inside with meat outside still makes him a robot. Yeah. But the fact that RoboCop is reverse, it really blurs the line.
Isn't that interesting?
Is interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Because you're right, though. As soon as you put a human brain in it, you're like, okay, that doesn't work.
Like Robot Man. Robot Man is a man.
Oh, yeah.
He's a robot, but he's a man. That's what they call a Robot Man, because he's got a human brain.
Yep.
Wow, we are dorks.
I was not expecting us to have this sort of debate on this episode.
Well, look, this is one of my favorite things about our podcast in general. People who are listening, because you know I've been editing videos for our YouTube channel, which by the way we have a YouTube channel. Go check it out. And it's so fun re-listening to it and just going, what a bunch of fucking nerds. And it's amazing because I know for a fact that we have all had terrific luck with the ladies. Despite
we're no slouches.
We're no slouches, but also we're like so nerdy. And it's been wonderful actually reliving the conversations we've already had and just seeing how deep we go on this stuff and how nerdy it is. So, but I love it. I love these conversations, and robots are such an interesting thing because in stories, they're almost a replacement for man, just like Ed has been saying. And so that's what's fascinating about it, because at the same time, if it is partly a man, you really can't count it as a robot because it's a man.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, are there any robots that we've given short shrift? Because, like, obviously that Robo dude that comes down in the day the Earth stood still, Klaatu or some shit.
Was it? I think Klaatu was the name of the guy. Wasn't the robot Gort? Like G-O-R-T?
Yeah, I think the robot name was Gort. Yeah. Good call.
I mean, that is a pretty iconic robot. No, I was going to bring him up.
It really is.
It is pretty iconic. But I have a very important question, and is it as iconic as this?
Oh my god! Get that off the screen.
Don't show us this fucking real steel robot, you son of a bitch.
Well, I mean, maybe not. Who's to say?
Yeah.
No, but like,
no, it is.
Day the Earth Stood Still is definitely worth mentioning in the same way that Metropolis is worth mentioning, because that's like an early huge pop culture example of the robot in action. And that's a great, I mean, Metropolis as well, but like The Day the Earth Stood Still is a great movie because it addresses the kind of existential fears that robots bring up, but it subverts it, right? Because suddenly the robot is still a tool that's subservient to the alien, and it's destructive. However, it's being used to try to disarm humanity of using nuclear bombs, which are not robots. So in a lot of ways, it's a less advanced technology, but more dangerous. And so it's this weird sort of, I don't know if it's a commentary on technology or what, but it's like the alien arrives, brings his super advanced destructive technology to convince us to stop using our destructive technology. And the fact that the alien technology is in the form of man and has some ability to control its destruction makes it less scary.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's an interesting swirl of ideas there.
And it's interesting that you brought up this robot, specifically Gort, because it also Gort looks just like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica. And I wonder if Battlestar Galactica lifted that a little bit from that, because they look very similar. The Cylon toaster robots, obviously not the hot, sexy robots.
Which, mentioning the Cylons, also, we have to bring up the Daleks from Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I know that none of us are necessarily Doctor Who heads, but the Daleks as sort of the real poor man's R2-D2 that were extant way before R2-D2 are iconic robots in pop culture.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, technically they're mutants inside of a robot body, but I think it still counts because it's still a robot.
It's a little, okay, so it's a little bit like, does Krang's giant human body from Ninja Turtles count as a robot? And I would say yes, and I would say the Daleks are kind of the same thing.
I 100% agree.
Okay,
and also I just want to include Daleks in the conversation just because they're dope. It's so interesting.
But how big are the Dalek mutants inside? Are they roughly as big as the shell? Because I think that's the one major point I think we're maybe missing or dancing around earlier. We were talking about the difference between an exoskeleton and a robot that you're in, right? It's mass. If you're like going and the thing is going, that's one thing. If you're going zit zit zit, that's another thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're smaller.
And
if they're little dudes, then like, yeah, or like they're like Babu Frick size or something.
Well, the problem is that there's like 3 different lores on them from what I remember. They show one where it has a claw like early, and then another one, and it was pretty small claw. It doesn't look that big, but it looks all freaky. And then they show another one where it's just sort of a green goo. So yeah,
I think that the Daleks are like non-bipedal, like they're some sort of amorphous blob thing.
Yeah. So I think that they can count because they're definitely, they need that body, by the way, because they couldn't do shit without that body. Like they literally couldn't do anything. So there you go.
Yeah.
They're utilizing a robot to destroy universes and the Doctor's species.
Yeah, and I think it is very similar to Krang in so much as it's like without those body, like yes, it's keeping them alive, but it's also like they wouldn't even be able to interact with, you know, everyday life. It's like they themselves don't have limbs and legs and fingers and hands and shit. Not that the trash can looking armor does either, but it has ways that they implement it in order to do things. Yeah.
Yeah. Then since you brought up Krang, I'm just going to go ahead and say, how about Mobius? Am I saying it right? No, not Mobius. MODOK. Sorry. How about MODOK?
Oh, but see, okay. MODOK, I think that's a suit, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, he's buying into the concept that he has become a machine who is only designed for killing or whatever. But he is just a big head. It's an exosuit, just like an Iron Man armor, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, damn, because I almost wanted it to be a robot, but I don't think it's iconic either, so that's fine.
I want to give an honorable mention to the Mousers from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You fucking love those things.
I do love those things. I'm sorry. And you know what? Because they're also another great example of cannon fodder robots.
Yeah,
they look dope. I mean, they're essentially like the droid army from the prequels, but they don't look ridiculous.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Oh, and guys, I just got to say, I know sometimes this thing turns into 80s the podcast, and I hate that.
Yeah.
But god dang it, we ain't going to go this whole time and not talk about Johnny Five is alive.
Oh, no.
Johnny Five is one of the greatest robots in pop culture history. He's got tank treads. He's got Wall-E totally bit the fuck out of his design. Hard as hell. A Megalodon couldn't bite more than them motherfuckers. That was ridiculous.
Also, Short Circuit was it was a real special movie. I remember watching that as a kid, and like every emotion you could have, you get from that movie. I laughed my ass off at the movie. I felt like caring about it. I felt sadness. I mean, the whole thing, the whole gamut of emotions.
You felt horny for Steve Gutenberg.
Yes, 100%. And that robot. I'd fuck that robot. Don't get it twisted.
Oh, those treads rolling over your nuts. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Weird stuff.
Hey, whatever you're into, Ed. You didn't say it.
As the designated halfway young person on the podcast, I don't have that kind of reverence for Short Circuit, and I would almost guarantee, even without seeing Short Circuit, that Wall-E did it better. And both Wall-E and Eve from Wall-E need to be on this list. Those are phenomenal robots.
100%.
They are definitely way more phenomenal than Johnny Five. I just want to give him a mention because he is part of the evolution from his iconic design, the tank treads, the skinny body, the stuff like that. Robots look like that for quite a while until we got these new Amazon robots that they're like. Can we take a break real quick and talk about the fact that as human beings, we need to stop like kicking robots in the ass and throwing them down the stairs and making dog ones that can run and shoot guns and shit. Like, can we just relax on that shit for a little bit? We did it. We know we can do it. Let's relax on it. Like, if they get better, if they get like, they can fight like Scott Adkins and shoot better than Bradley Cooper in that Clint Eastwood movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's curtains on a lot of levels, you know what I'm saying, for real life.
First off, Ed, I appreciate you bringing Scott Adkins into this, but I do want to point out that Michael Jai White would beat his ass. I just want to point that out.
Well, I don't want the robot to fight as good as fucking Michael Jai White. I'm trying to manage the fucking expectations for us to fight them.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I just gave a better. Oh, no, you're right. What was I thinking?
Have you guys seen that the Boston Dynamics robot can now do flips?
The ones that are just regular, walking around, they're quite good enough. If you put a gun in their hand and just sort of spun them around, you know what I'm saying? Make them as good as your average disgruntled white boy, and we still got a problem. we still got a problem, dude. You know what I mean? They don't have to be as good as they are in those fake videos or in Neil Blomkamp's whole oeuvre or any of that stuff. They don't have to be that good.
Look, I mean, it's interesting how, like, I love all these movies where robots do cool shit. And I do love that we get inspired by this stuff because we got a lot of great technology from movies. Like communicators, we've got cell phones because of communicators, like 100%. Like that's part of what, I mean, there are people who've been coming up with that idea for a long time, and it's all built upon shoulder and all that stuff. But all of that, those creative types have influenced the technology we make. And I think that's good and bad, because I just want to point out that there's been a bunch of drones that they just programmed to try to figure out who's an enemy and not an enemy. And they have fucked up enough times that we should not be using that technology. And it's like, it's one of those things where you just go, okay, just like you said, relax on it a little bit. Maybe make a robot just lift a bunch of heavy shit for us. Can we just do that?
But now we're talking AI, not robots. Right?
True. Like, that's true. That's true.
Now, I mean, I think I'm still talking about robots because I don't think it would have to think to go through a certain number of, like, Ed 209 doesn't think. It goes person, threat, shoot, repeat. You know what I'm saying? There's not any thought process, and that's what's so scary about the so-called destructive nature, rather the destructive potential of robots that are humanoid and also super strong and have, like I said, just give them a fucked up center of gravity is all I'm saying. Like, can all the robot designers say, like, okay, left arm, you can pull it right off, fucked up center of gravity, and you know exactly where the power port is on all of them. Just like, let's just decide that. If it's not stopping you from across the street.
Teach that in elementary school right away.
Right. It's just like stop, drop, and roll, push button, take control, or whatever the motion is to fucking pull out the thing.
Perfect.
You know what I mean? Something.
Well, and in theory, this is another one of those problems. Like, it's the way they train cops to shoot guns is to shoot them in the heart. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You aim for the chest or the head. Those are the things you're supposed to aim for. They're kill shots. If robots are as accurate as we would like them to be, and they are, if they're accurate shooting guns as they could be, let's say, then why couldn't we just teach them to, I don't know, shoot a foot? Shoot in the leg in an area that goes past the bone. Shoot in the shoulder. I mean, we don't know
that they're not. We don't know that they're not doing that.
Yeah,
because,
I mean, we do.
We can assume, but we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know.
I mean, if cops are training robots, cops are like, hey, program the robot. Then you know what the cops are training the robot to do.
Yeah. all this talk about being able to shut down robots when they go AWOL makes me think of another favorite of mine. What about HAL from 2001?
Oh, I know you would bring it up. I wasn't going to have to.
Yeah.
HAL from 2001 is possibly the greatest robot run amok in cinema history.
I mean, everything. I think a lot of people who run amok on other robots is draw from HAL, right? I mean, wouldn't we all agree with that?
Yeah. The original bad boy artificial intelligence.
I mean,
he sagged his pants.
It kind of introduced that entire concept of like, well, what happens when the robots? And what's interesting about HAL, I think, is like, it's not even that the robot started thinking on its own, because you can make the argument that HAL never really went rogue in 2001. It was more just like the alien from, or excuse me, the robot from Alien, right? Where it's like he was just following his programming a little bit too closely. And it's like that in and of itself becomes a problem. And so you need that stop, drop, and roll, hit the arm, pull it off type of thing, which they didn't have, which is why Bowman, almost died and had to go into the bowels of HAL's brain and start pulling out old cartridges until he sang that sad song.
I mean, I just think this whole I did see a Black Mirror that was very utilitarian about a lady running from a robot dog. And it's just like, that's why, I mean, like I said, to me, our conception of them in our fiction and what I think we're going to try to do with them in real life are the same, which is why, like I said, a fake viral video makes me mad. A fucking, let's teach them how to shoot people in the face. Let's teach them how to roam the neighborhoods and know which, tase a gang member, put him on your back, take him to another gang's hood, drop him off, robot. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that stuff, even though I just thought of it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that type of stuff. You know what I mean? It's that bothers me that we use our imaginations. Because the thing is, robots, I think the reason why we're having this conversation is robots in fiction can represent like the best of us because they can outlive us and learn all this stuff throughout the universe and evolve and change in these ways we don't even know. In the movie Her, that robot is one of the, it is an artificial intelligence. That is a fact. But in the way that we're talking about robots in this conversation, one of the best robots of all fucking time. Yeah. Because going from like a utilitarian, I'm here to service your needs. You need someone to bounce some ideas off of. You need someone to flirt with. You need a smoky voice in your ear so you can go to sleep and sleep the sleep of the lonely. Totally fine. I got you. Now I love you. Now that I understand what love is, I want so much more of it that you could provide me. Now I'm another being. That's like the definition of how we kind of see the evolution of AI.
I haven't seen Her, but what I hear you saying is that basically that's a movie about being polyamorous.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
But what if your chick wanted to fuck 500 million other guys at once?
Oh, well, we know where Ron stands on the issue.
Dude,
hey, Ron, why not?
Dude, how big is that closet for you to stand in and look through the crack as 500 million guys rail your wife? Like, how big is that closet?
That's too much for me. That's too much. Oh my God. Robocuck. Oh my God. Look, if that isn't on Pornhub already, I don't know.
If you don't fuck my wife, there'll be trouble.
Dildotron 3000. Fuck my wife.
Dude, and it's a K2SO robot because it's black. All right, here we go.
Here's a hilarious word, by the way. In Urban Dictionary, robocuck means the art of flirting and giving compliments to gangster grannies like Goonie. I don't know exactly what that is, but that is hilarious.
You're not supposed to know what that is.
Yeah.
Goonie is just somebody that somebody knows.
That's funny.
Well, that is ridiculous. But so Robocuck. So basically, the point of like robots is to somehow replace us a little bit. So as we go through our list, we got Bender, Bender's on there. Data's on there.
Yep.
I would say either, you know, Bishop Ash type of robot is up there, you know, because they're interesting. The Blade Runner motherfuckers, even though they are biomaterial, they are still programmed to die. They still have protocols and shit which they have to buck up against. And they can be programmed to think that they're people. Yeah. Which makes them by definition a robot, ironically enough.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Terminator.
Well, I was going to say, let's add T-800 and T-1000 to the list.
Hell, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That might be like the most inventive robot in pop culture. The fully liquid metal robot. Like, I don't know that it's ever going to be workable, maybe sometime in the future, but like, just conceptually, that idea that like, yeah, it's a robot, we can program it, but like, all of the circuits and programming and whatever are part of this liquid matrix that can take any shape. Frightening and used to amazing effect in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think you're going to beat T1. So T-800, T-1000, Ash Bishop, both of those are like one entry. I mean, you know, one and two entries. Then, RoboCop for half of RoboCop. Great robot. Then the second half, he breaks his programming. He's not a robot anymore. R2D2, obviously. Would say R2D2 and C3PO, but R2D2 is certainly the Beyonce of that relationship.
Iron Giant, I think is still high on the list. But yeah, I don't know if we're really missing any.
I mean, I think those are the top ones. If you guys out there listening have any other ones, throw it at us, email us. Email thegreatestpod@gmail.com.
Wait, but you got to make sure that they know that it's like email thegreatestpod.
You just did that, so we're good.
@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And also, we forgot one, guys. Okay. I won't let us get out of here. I won't let us record another Patreon, patreon.com/thegreatestpod. I won't let us record another one of those episodes until we right this wrong. Rosie's is coming back in here because I'm serious business. I hate the Jetsons. I hate everything about it, honestly.
Yeah.
But Rosie, like, makes sense. Like, Rosie makes sense. Rosie makes that whole thing make some sort of sense in regards to you're going to get robot help. You're going to program them to like your family and shit. But like she still has her own deal, you know, sometimes, you know, the robot problems and shit. And yeah, she's got a nice robot
with somebody at some point, I believe.
Yeah, she's got a nice robot shape, man. Come on through. If you don't, but I hope I don't sound like some kind of fucking sex robot enthusiast because like, you know, they haven't put like a robot cannot do what people can do, and I think that's the one thing that in the end, when we look at our fiction about robots and them trying to replace people, I hope we don't lose sight of the fact that like people aren't just a set of attributes to be roughly approximated by machinery we can control. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I do believe that things are moving in that direction a little bit. I have seen certain, you know, you go on Twitter and you'll see people like, hey, you can design your own e-girl. Like, what the fuck? Why would I want to design a girl? That's weird.
And by the way, there is a very stark dividing line. I don't understand people in general who are going to conceptualize sex as not something that you are doing to another person.
Right.
Like to me, giving the other person pleasure and finding different ways to do that and having them react to what you're doing is like the best part of sex.
Yeah, it's what it is. You know, like really.
So this idea of like, I'm just trying to replace my hand is basically just another form of masturbation. You know what I mean?
Oh, speaking of which, honorable mention robot, and this motherfucker is a robot. Homegirl from Weird Science. That's a robot.
Isn't she technically kind of like a magic electricity being? I don't know.
Look, man, if the Blade Runner motherfuckers is robots, that chick is a robot. She's
Fine.
made for these weird stuff, and then countermands her programming. She her programming will not allow her to like diddle kids because she's just a lady robot. She's not a fucking weirdo, but she will help them. She'll help them take bras off their head. She'll help them, clean up, think smart, be cool. You know what I'm saying? She'll help them with that sort of stuff. And I just wish we were more wholesome as we get out here. I wish we were more wholesome, even me, I guess. But like, it's so funny to make fun of how people, again, we've used robots for everything but from what they should be used for. We use robots to threaten the working man into being a fucking slave. We should be using robots to like have the working man be able to work on whatever he wants to. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the episode of The Mandalorian. Again, this is one of the problems with robot situation in Star Wars, but at the same time, these robots were just doing the work for the most part and glad and fine to do the work. And everybody else got to make art and shop and just do fun stuff because the robots were doing the work. In theory, that would be a pretty cool utopia where, a lot of the work, the food was made and harvested by robots and not AI, to be clear, just robots that you made do that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we could all focus on like making cool art and talking and getting better and getting smarter and solving other problems and that sort of thing. And I don't know where the energy would come for robots to be doing that. So maybe we're not there anytime soon, but still, it's a cool concept.
I mean, ideally, we get there literally within a lifetime or two from right now. And it seems like we're on that route, as long as we can prioritize the sorts of ethics that we're talking about here. I mean, that's the big question mark.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a fitness president, like the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. He becomes president and he's like, yo, we're going to have fully autonomous robots that do all of the work for people. You can pursue whatever you want, but they're powered by Stairmasters and shit. So y'all motherfuckers better get out there, get to working out so that we can have an hour of your day will be spent working out to make the energy for the robots. And the whole rest of your life is spend the rest of your life spending. Here's a government check for you to go fuck around. Buy that microscope, Jimmy. Learn about the fucking small universe.
I love it, man. I love
Buy that telescope and learn about the larger universe.
Exacto fucking mundo. Yeah. Become an astronaut. Now you're fit enough to do it. Now you got 20/20 vision. You know what I mean? Like just all this stuff that we can be using robots for.
Hey, before we get out of here, I do want to point out that we have yet to really dive into the wide field of Japanese robots.
Oh man, and Mazinger Z, all that stuff.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, if anybody has contributed to the pop culture robot explosion, it is the pop culture artists of Japan. And of course, none is cooler than Mechagodzilla.
Mechagodzilla.
Oh, see, I was kind of making. I mean, Mechagodzilla is cool enough, but like, there are so many kick-ass robots from Japanese culture.
Well, I mean, really I think from the layman though, before we did that Tokusatsu episode, I was like, is Ultraman a robot or like a big guy? Is he the same as like Mazinger Z? And then we got sold Mazinger Z, I think, as Transor Z over here. He would like shoot off his fists, and his girl used to shoot off her boobs as missiles.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Titty attack. I think it's actually just called missile attack, but still.
But then you got like the what are they, the EVAs from Evangelion?
Oh yeah.
I mean, those are sort of, I have not watched it, but people say that those are like the apex of giant fighting robots.
They're pretty badass. Evangelion is first off, the art is 6 as hell, just to point that out. I mean, that's probably the crowning achievement of every anime out there. Is the art is insane and just so fun to watch. But yeah, they're pretty kick-ass robots, and all have different designs.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this is
we didn't talk about Gundams either.
No,
like,
but do those count as?
I mean
that's what Evangelion is, right? They're essentially Gundams. Yeah.
Yeah, but Evangelions are like weird Gundams, though, like from extra dimensional weird Gundams. Whereas Gundams are like, all right, we got these big robots. We fly this type of big robot. You fly that type of big robot. We kind of have a clannish, gangish, territory mindset about our different robots. But they are just robots. But like the Evangelion shit is just some weird shit. I never really got into it. I sound like fucking such a Luddite for a lot of anime. Yeah, I do apologize, but I just I just like ninja feudal era anime. I like that because it's like, to me, that world is so interesting and frankly magical. It's the only magical fantasy land that I will accept. In Ninja Scroll, a dude is jumping through shadows to kill people. I'm down with it. But if you pull out a fantasy sword from a rock or talk to some chick in the lake or something, I'm out. I'm so out. So that's just me. That's just me. But as far as like,
well, and look, the names in the Evangelion are not, they're not like super fancy. They're just like Evangelion Unit 2, Mark 6. It's not like it's there's mass produced ones and all of that stuff, and they're definitely unique, but they're also one of those ones where it's like they're cool because they're driven by badass pilots too. But I definitely think they still count as robots. So,
well, and I mean, Ed, you mentioned it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Pacific Rim, but if we're talking about robots that started in Japan and are big fighters and don't have humans riding in their brains, we have to talk about the Transformers a little bit more than we already did.
Oh man, and you know what? I think the Transformers really represent one of the first times that children were able to be shown the concept of like totally autonomous robots that have nothing to do with people.
Yeah,
like they're not built to serve people at all. They are by definition artificial intelligence. Because or maybe not even artificial, because what's artificial to them? They're born on a mechanical planet, born out of some weird process.
Right.
There's nothing artificial to them about their intelligence.
It would be techno-organic, right? Like
right.
Similar to like Brainiac in the Superman stories.
Or like Warlock from the New Mutants.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, like a techno-organic people. And we did give short shrift to the Borg, but I just think it's because they're boring and they suck and they've been overused for 30 fucking years. And I don't understand it. But I will say this, as a robot, they do function well, because if you think about it, a robot has a repetitive task. The Borg's repetitive task is to assimilate others' uniqueness. So in essence, it is like that beaker robot that goes down into the water or whatever, like a lever. It's like a simple lever that somebody just left on, and they left the motherfucker on to assimilate. And it's just going out and doing a rather simple task. Once you have nanotubules coming out of your arms and shit, walk up to somebody, go like this, they're assimilated. It's not a technical, tactical thing. They overwhelm you with force, shoot some stuff in your neck, and make you them. It's really simple. You know what I mean? So there's not too much tactics to it, which is why the more tactics they use and the more that they lost, it made it seem really fucking dumb. Anyway,
yet another Star Trek tangent. I want us to get to the Transformers. Yes. Yeah. And only because I'm not a big Transformers head. I actually never watched the cartoon, nor have seen the Michael Bay movies. So I really don't know shit about shit, but I'm not going to say they're lame. All I'll say is that from my extraordinarily limited knowledge, Optimus Prime is where it's at. But please tell me there are cooler Transformers.
No. Oh, okay. It's like, tell me there are cooler He-Man guys. Tell me there are cooler G.I. Joes than Snake Eyes. Ooh. You're fucking lying. You know what I mean? It's like,
and it's so interesting because like you'd think it would be one of the cool cars or Starscream or what was the Dinobots or something like that, but nah, Optimus Prime's still the dopest. I don't give a shit about a diesel, but Optimus Prime, whew.
Well, and
that's a truck you can love.
Yeah, oh, dude. And okay. This is what you've been asking for, Bill.
That voice.
I can't do that. I can't do Peter Cullen. My register doesn't go in there. But I will say that voice and the countenance of this ultimate robot who's been entrusted with the matrix of leadership right? So there's a special thing installed in his chest that runs leadership protocols all up on his shit and makes him get that extra boost to be super dope. But there is that taxing thing on him of I have to live up to being the leader of these Autobots. And in most of the lore, the Autobots are more or less on the run and their numbers are smaller because they're sort of kind of like our Transformers pitch on Reboot It that you can go check out. They're kind of these kind of they're utilitarian, they're actual robots. They're built for functionality and shit. But the Decepticons are built for war. So like the war robots and the spy robots going up against the, hey, I want to carry a load over there and I want to, make a piece of art or whatever. They're getting fucked up by these evil, more powerful robots. So they have to be born again hard to get their shit together. I'm the only person that can whip them into shape. It's like the Autobots are like all those Wisniewskis and Wachowskis and shit that went off to war and shit in World War II. Just a bunch of little 5'2" guys fucking kicking in front of the barbershop, and all of a sudden we got to be the fucking army and take out Hitler. What the fuck?
Yeah,
that's what that's what the Autobots are like, right? So like, there's got to be this badass dude that will instill in them, like Sergeant York or whatever the fuck, instill in them that we can defeat these guys that fly and turn into scorpion dinosaurs and all this shit. You're a truck, I'm a truck. We're gonna fight diamond scorpion dinosaurs and fucking planes with missiles
and guns. We're just gonna fight a gun.
Yeah. The main guy is a gun. Don't worry about it. His main man is a stereo for some reason, but he's a gun. He's a gun. There's all this shit going on with Transformers that basically, as a little kid, you get some of what I just said, but basically what you get is these guys are obviously the good guys, and Optimus Prime is the goodest of the good guys, and they are just wanting to be peaceful robots, but these other ones seem to have taken their functionality too personal, or whether their programming too personal. Like these Autobots seem to have evolved into being warrior poets, and these other motherfuckers are stuck on being death machines. So it's almost like, civilization versus the savagery, the mechanized dehumanization of war as a concept is what the Decepticons are, and work and responsibility and just everything you get in a fucking Chevy ad is what what the Autobots represent.
Except for the wholesome part of a Chevy ad. And let me say this also, I'd make an argument. I don't know if they did this on purpose. I think the Decepticons are colonialism, because their goal is to spread to every planet and to take over every single thing and get the most power and the most stuff, basically. So you have these workman-like robots literally fighting the Nazis who are trying to spread all over the universe.
Yeah, relentless expansion, and I think that's last things last. The thing about them coming here, I think on some level, obviously it was this functionality of the toy. That's number one, okay. But as an end story reason, the Autobots really don't want to rile us all up and tell us all about alien life and all this kind of shit. They don't want to do that. No. They want to be here as quiet as they can and kind of take the war somewhere else where there won't be collateral damage. Decepticons kind of don't give a fuck, but they look at the way that they can move about the world without being fucked with by transforming, so they do it too. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of the subterfuge angle of it to keep the war secret is almost like this weird courtesy to us that the Autobots really embrace and the Decepticons not so much, but they're both transforming and shit. So like the transformation aspect is them acquiescing to being in our world. Because I don't know how much they actually, besides for utilitarian purposes, like I'd rather be a guy right now. Sometimes I want to be a vehicle. I want to get from here to there real quick and I just want to relax. But sometimes I got to become a guy to grab up stuff and do stuff. So I think on their planet, it's just like that. But here, there's the added layer of them being robots in disguise.
I love that we have delved deep into a cartoon that was for sure made just to sell us toys. But
Joe Star would be proud of my rant about Transformers just now.
100% he would. Before we do move on, I do want to ask you guys, do we count cyborgs?
Didn't we have that whole conversation? It's like as long as they don't have human minds.
Okay, then I don't think I can count Android 17 and 18, but except for that they have been programmed to hate Goku and fight him specifically. So, and then they break from their programming eventually as well and kill their own maker.
Oh, it's basically the RoboCop story.
I mean, it kind of is. And Android 17 and 18 and Dragon Ball Z are great. I mean, and it has one of the best fight scenes in Dragon Ball Z history is between I want to say 17 and Piccolo.
Okay.
So
I mean, oh, and now would be a really good time also, just as we dismount this section of the conversation. We're not gonna talk about the Vision. We've said we're not, but the reason why we're not is he's not a fucking robot. He's not a robot because he doesn't have some repetitive function like that. He's not a robot. He wasn't designed to do X, and now he does Y because he was supposedly designed to destroy the Avengers, but that doesn't. Anyway, he's not a robot, and he's not even an android because, or rather, he is an android. And I hate how much story crap they give him, even though he doesn't earn any of it. He doesn't earn anybody's fucking love. He doesn't earn anybody's fucking love. That bitch is crazy. I'm sorry. I never say that. I never say that. But on some real shit, he's never shown her one bit of goddamn love ever. He tried to fucking coop her up. He made her some bad fucking paprikash. And he got folded up like a goddamn origami napkin when she threw some powers on his ass. That's it. That's what he did. And there's a love story. It's bullshit, man. He's always been bullshit. He's a hollow cape, piece of invisible shit, intangible shit. He sucks. And he's not going to be in this goddamn conversation. That's it.
He's technically a synthezoid. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed a rant like that, you should buy my album that's coming out July 17th, On the Wing of a Dragon. There are a few rants in there. Not quite as hateful, but
thank you guys for listening to a artificially intelligent, fully autonomous, roving episode of The Greatest Pod.